That was devastating.
I'm sorry.
But very good. So, look, I just wanted to start by reading, because this is a film chosen by Nick, just reading a little bit that Nick wrote about this film in the book. I've come to enjoy hybrid, complex takes on our world. Among them is the remarkable The Arbor, 2010. Cleo Barnard's masterpiece is, on the surface, an account of the brief career and early death of Andrea Dunbar, who lived in the Buttershaw Estate in Bradford. The scenes from The Arbor, shot in the open among a crowd of Buttershaw residents, are heartbreakingly intense. But Barnard has bigger ambitions here. She came to film after working in performance art and hit on the idea of using actors to play Dunbar's children, acquaintances, lovers and neighbours. But lip-syncing the real voices. The actors memorised these interviews, vocalising them while listening to them. I used this technique to draw attention to the fact that documentary narratives are constructed as fictional ones, Barnard explains. These devices are her own way of penetrating Dunbar's tragic world, but Barnard, as it turns out, isn't interested in just Dunbar's brief life. The latter part of the film recounts, in heart-rending detail, the life story of her addict daughter Lorraine, the death of Lorraine's own son, and her consequent trial for manslaughter. We get to see her over 3 generations, the scarring caused by poverty, drugs and abandonment, and the struggle to survive too. Each time I watch the film, I tell myself that fiction, even Dunbar's, often can't do this, but The Arbor does. So, I mean, it's a really magnificent piece of work. It was made in 2010. It still stands the test of time. Why did you choose that subject for a film, and can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I didn't set out to make a film about Andrea or Lorraine. I set out to make a film about a place. So I really love Alan Clark's films, and I didn't really know Andrea's theatre work because I'm not really from a theatre background. But so I picked up a book of her plays because I loved the film, and it'd been reprinted with the State Affair. And so I was really interested in the idea that you go back to a place 10 years on from a previous work. So I knew that I wanted to interview people, and I knew that I wanted to use I wanted to do 2 live performances, actually. One on Buttershaw and one in the House of Lords, because a State Affair had been performed there, and then I was going to create a verbatim text and perform it in both places and cut it together. But it changed a lot. Yeah.
And so, can you talk about how you thought up this process and how you went about making it happen, how you went about executing it? And because it's quite complex, and there's a lot of, time is messed around with, as it is in all films and documentaries. And you've got, the older Lorraine looking back, and time is all over the place, but it makes perfect sense in the film. And then you've got the way that it's performed, the way that using the real voices and then using actors.
Yeah, it was I guess it was commissioned by Archangel, I should probably say that. So it was made as an artist film. It wasn't made as a film for cinema, and I sort of deliberately wanted to ask questions about documentary. That was part of the reason for making the film, and that was certainly the reason for using the lip-sync technique. And I suppose in terms of how it developed from that initial idea was Lorraine's. It's funny because you've just seen it, so you know this, but Lorraine's words at the end of a State Affair were really powerful, and so I knew that I wanted to speak to her, but I didn't know that she was, awaiting her trial at that point for manslaughter. So I didn't know about Harris until I'd been commissioned, and then the bit of footage at the end where Andrea talks about Lorraine being a good baby, I found really moving. Still do, actually. And but at that point I only knew the bare bones of the story, so I knew that Andrea died very young, and I knew what had happened to Lorraine, but I hadn't met anybody at that point. But I suspected that that would be the end of the film.
Can you talk about the reaction that the people of Buttershaw had, but also the reaction of the family when they saw the film?
Well, after I kind of kept talking to everybody throughout the process, and when we'd got a cut of the film that was sort of ready to show to people, I showed it to Lorraine first, and her words were that she was raw from it in a good way, and then we took it kind of to each person one by one and showed them the film.
And what about the residents? Because what was their reaction to those scenes shot on the grounds outside?
Yeah, people often ask me that, and I kind of wish that I'd maybe put in some outtakes, because it all looks quite formal and sensible, but actually it was a riot in a really good way. So if ever I shouted cut, then kids would be sort of cycling through the door or bouncing around on the sofas and stuff like that. So and a lot of the people that you see in the back of the shot are Andrea's family, because her sister Pamela lived on the Arbor, and her other and actually Richard Dunbar, who's her nephew's in one of the scenes. So yeah, people were very open, because by that point I'd been going for 2 years, so I'd got to know people on the Arbor really, really well.
But not critical about how they were being, the kind of really raw portrayal.
I think the person who it was hardest for in a way was Lisa, who because in some ways, even though with the scene with the fire, I'm trying to, the reason for including that right up front like that is so that you understand that we're all unreliable narrators in a way, and but it does favour Lorraine's story in some ways over Lisa's. So I think it was hard for Lisa, but people were. Anne and Steve were actually really pleased that I'd made the film, because they felt that it honoured Harris.
Because one of the things, I've just been flicking through Nick's book, and one of the things I'm always asked at Storyville is, why do you put on such bleak films? And actually, I think Nick says it very articulately in the book, but I agree. And even with this film, there are just always, amidst the bleakness, these moments of humanity, like Steve and Anne. I mean, just their humanity towards their neighbours, but the way they take on these children and give them a home and give them food and give them care and love, and just those little moments of real humanity and the humour that comes out, and the almost the masochism of, it's just everything is there in that film. I think it's bleak, but there are other, it's a huge scope of humanity within it. And I watch that film and I think about Brexit and the kind of disaffection in this country, and it's very prescient, looking at that, because there are still these incredibly disaffected people with, who are on the poverty line and who have these damaged lives, and, nothing's changed.
I think Andrea was a really unique person and playwright, and in a way because she'd written The Arbor, in a way that meant that I could make this thing where you looked over 30 years of one street and one family, and you could understand something about the effects of marginalisation and deprivation. And so, yeah, thanks to Andrea, really.
It's very powerful, thank you.